Hello, Mr. Shuttleworth. Thank you for a thought-provoking session earlier. Can you just briefly introduce yourself for our viewers?
Sure. My name is Mark Shuttleworth. I'm a South African who's been living in Europe for some time. I spent all of my time working on a project called Ubuntu, which brings together the work of many thousands of open source free software developers into a sort of simple open source replacement for Windows and Microsoft Office, which is being used by millions of people around the world.
Mm-hmm. How is the GSM coverage in orbit?
The GSM coverage in orbit. You know, the telecommunications from the space station are really quite amazing. We had a 2 megabit link to the ground, and we had some VoIP software installed on the station, which allowed us to call people from the space station as if we were sitting at a desk in Houston. And the funny thing is, people would often ask, you know, where are you? But when you're in space, you have no idea where you are, because unless you're sitting looking out of the window, you know, you could be anywhere over the earth. So we'd be having conversations. I'd be having conversations with someone on the ground, and they would ask, you know, what do you see, or which country are you over? And we wouldn't have any idea.
Let me take a look.
Yeah.
There will be some questions which you obviously talked about earlier during the presentation, but in short, why create Ubuntu?
I was inspired to create Ubuntu because I thought it would have a global impact, and having flown in space, I wanted to do something that would have a positive impact globally. I also thought that the time was right to bring the work of the free software community to a much larger audience. Open source had been a big part of my own success in some of my businesses, but I'm a technologist. I enjoy technology, and so I was able to use open source even though it was quite hard to use. What I wanted to do was try and bring the positive capabilities of open source to people who don't think of themselves as technologists, to people who just have to use computers in order to do other things that they're interested in. And I knew that would be a challenge, and I wanted a challenge. So that provided the motivation and the inspiration for Ubuntu.
So you wanted to bring a good thing to more people?
Yeah. You know, the work of free software is done by people who are exploring their own interests or the interests of their company, and they will put a certain amount into it. If we can bring that work to 10 times as many people, then that's 10 times as satisfying for them. They've made an impact in the lives of 10 times as many people. So our job is really to help expand the audience for the work of the free software community.
Microsoft DOS took off not because it pushed something out, but because it jumped on the PC bandwagon. Today's equivalent are smartphones and tablet PCs. Is there a plan with Ubuntu there? Is Ubuntu MID a serious project under the canonical umbrella?
We definitely see a great deal of innovation happening around the new form factors, phone and tablet form factors. I think it's appropriate to try and encourage free software developers to think about those form factors as well. For our part, we've spent quite a lot of time working on a touch stack, which allows developers to build free software applications that are touch and gesture based rather than keyboard and mouse based. And we know that people are starting to build tablets using Ubuntu as a core with that. I think the most important thing is to figure out how to bring free software developers into that world. And so, you know, Ubuntu, we know Ubuntu is being used by a lot of free software developers, and these tools are things that we hope will do that. But at this stage, our focus is on the desktop. There are still many more desktops shipped every year than there are tablets or other kind of productivity environments. So that's where we've kept our focus.
Mm-hmm. What remains to be done to provide an experienced Windows user with a smooth migration to Ubuntu?
Mm-hmm. When we look at large organizations that are migrating from Windows to Linux, and particularly to Ubuntu, we find that the organizations which are most successful plan that migration very carefully, and they start by adopting free software on Windows, things like Firefox and OpenOffice on Windows. They then slowly get their users used to those applications before moving to the operating system, to something like Ubuntu. The other thing that I think is really important for those organizations to do is to harness the web and to deliver as many of their core applications as web applications rather than traditional desktop applications. The organizations that follow that path have a fairly smooth experience in moving from Windows and the proprietary applications that come with it to a more open environment. And the cost benefits obviously are huge when they do that. And more importantly, I think the benefits of focus and the ability of having the ability to have their IT team focus on the things that the new applications that they want to deploy, rather than focusing on viruses or the management of Windows desktops. I think those are the real benefits.
Is Canonical talking to big software vendors like Adobe or Microsoft about migrating their flagship products to other operating systems like Photoshop or?
So we have a good relationship with Adobe, and some of the Adobe products are available on Ubuntu. We've not yet seen any suggestion that there's a significant interest in moving Photoshop specifically. The Linux community is seen as a place where you get a lot of web development done, so Flash is seen as a reasonable fit for that. But the Linux community is not seen as a platform for creative professionals, and it's also not seen as being very supportive of proprietary software, which Photoshop is and would stay. I think that we should change that. I think that we should figure out how to create a culture within the free software community of supporting the companies that do port their software to Linux, even if they keep it proprietary. And while that may appear to be at odds with the idea of moving towards a world where more software is free software, I think we have to recognize that companies will move one step at a time. And the first step is to make their proprietary software available on Linux. The next step is to make portions of their software portfolio available under open source licenses. And this will be a gradual, careful process, and we need to treat the companies that start making those steps. We need to treat them very well.
I see. You've spent a part of your presentation talking about Unity and GNOME. Can you maybe summarize in a sentence why Unity is better than GNOME 3?
Well, I'd rather not, make the case for Unity being better than GNOME 3, because for the moment we see ourselves as part of the GNOME platform. I think diversity in that platform is healthy. We have Banshee and Rhythmbox, for example, and that makes the whole GNOME platform better. So I think it would be antagonistic to sort of describe Unity as better or list things which make Unity better. I think users should try them. I think users should try them both, and on the back of that, choose the one that works best for them. In Unity, our focus very much is in providing the sort of experience that we can bring to end users. And so perhaps there's a reason for us to make different choices to the developers of alternative interfaces. Ultimately, that diversity and to a certain extent that competition is healthy, and I think that's where we are today.
Is there a conscious effort at Canonical today to keep the company environmentally sustainable?
So we're in the unusual position that as a company we have something like 430 people in about 220 different cities, and the reason for that is we have quite a large portion of the team work from home. So from an environmental footprint point of view, we don't do a lot of printing and sharing of documents, nor do we do a lot of sort of commuting. So I think that's very good from an environmental point of view. Personally, I have some challenges in that regard because I travel by private plane, so I feel like I need to work very hard to compensate for that. But I do feel good about Canonical and the way that it works. I think we are trying to discover patterns of work and play for the 21st century. We're doing a lot of work right now, for example, to extend the free software video conferencing capabilities so that we can talk with each other using video conferencing on Ubuntu, which I think will be very useful for other companies who adopt free software platforms and also have distributed teams that they want to bring together in a sort of virtual workplace.
I can see how that would be valuable. Is Canonical profitable?
Canonical is not profitable today. I continue to invest in it. I think we could narrow our focus and so that there are pieces of the operation which are sustainable now. But to do that, I think we'd be giving up the opportunity to help define the platforms, of computing for the future. The pieces where it's easiest to be profitable are the pieces where there's already established business models or established ways of doing things, like the server. But I'm very interested in being, looking at some of the newer areas, and those don't have proven business models. They aren't yet sort of fully established. So we continue to invest in order to be kind of ahead of the curve on those things. And from my perspective, I think that's the right thing to do.
So you're looking at the mid and longer term rather than the short term?
I mean, Canonical or Ubuntu has always been a long-term initiative for me. I wanted to find something that I could be, consumed with for a substantial period of time. I also wanted to do something which would be very challenging, uniquely challenging, and also something which would require someone that could bring what I could bring. There's not many projects that need the combination of resources and interest, that I have. So, in that regard, I certainly found a challenge.
Okay. What's the role of the Ubuntu community in development?
Oh, well, so Ubuntu is very interesting because it is a shared product. In some aspects, Canonical has real ownership. We're ultimately responsible for the CD. We print millions of them. We ship them all over the world. And so we feel a certain amount of ownership of what goes on that. But we also recognize that that's just one face of the whole project. And so we have a governance structure which starts with a governance council, which is only partially represented by Canonical people. The relationship between Canonical and community is a complex one because we decided to try something unique, which is that we would build one product together. Most other companies that work in Linux separate their community efforts from their commercial efforts. So they'll have a community edition where the rules are different to the commercial edition. And I think that makes some things easier because then community can feel like they get to do whatever they want. The flip side to that is that essentially I think it disempowers the community from having a direct relationship with end users. And so we wanted to do these, we wanted to build one product together. That means that we have to have a mutual understanding because we have business people working on the same product with non-business people. And that's a little bit more complicated. It's going to result in more complex conversations. We can't hide these ideas from each other. But at the end of the day, I think it's more interesting. It means that the work of the community, if you contribute to Ubuntu directly rather than contributing to something like Firefox or one of the other projects which is part of Ubuntu or which makes pieces that go into Ubuntu. If you contribute to Ubuntu directly, you can have that satisfaction that comes from knowing that literally every single thing that you change lands directly and unmodified on millions of desktops. That's, I think, enormously rewarding, and I think that's why we have such a huge community of contributors, because they really feel like their contributions are meaningful. A problem that they see that they want to fix is going to be a problem for hundreds of other users that see the same problem, and their fix goes to those hundreds of users. And I think that's very wonderful.
Okay. What kind of cooperation does Canonical get from hardware manufacturers?
Well, today we have relationships with Dell, Asus, Acer, Lenovo, and many other Toshiba, many other companies. Now, they vary in the extent to which they embrace open source free software in Ubuntu, but the trend very much is towards greater and greater use of Linux and Ubuntu. I think Android has been both helpful in that it's provided a real kick, a real boost to Linux generally, but it's also a challenge because it makes the lives of those organizations more complex. They have to deal with different kinds of Linux. And so, I think that's been a very interesting shift in the dynamic. Where we would like to get to, we would like to get to the point where all of the computers from all of those companies are available with either Windows or Ubuntu. In order to do that, we have to raise the usability of Ubuntu, we have to raise its quality, we have to raise not just the quality of the pieces that we take care of, but also the pieces that the whole, that all of the other communities whose work goes into Ubuntu, we have to raise the quality of all of that. We have to get beyond hacking, and we have to get to a point where we're really professional. The great thing about that is that the same things that motivate developers to contribute can also motivate people who write documentation, or people who contribute translations, or people who do QA. But we have to structure the leadership of projects to attract those people. If the leadership of projects is just all about development, then it's boring for other people. And so a lot of our work goes into trying to lead the way for how you attract bigger communities that are more rounded, and the things that you need to do that.
Matt Timmerman recently left the CTO position to someone else. What does that mean for Canonical?
So Matt obviously is one of our founding team. He's been there from the beginning, and he's an extraordinary person, absolutely brilliant. I think 7 years is a very long time to do, essentially to have the same set of responsibilities. I have a personal feeling that nobody should be in one position for more than 7 years, because you stop seeing the gaps. You become so used to the things that don't work that you just stop seeing them. So people have to take on new challenges, and I think Matt feels that 7 years at Canonical is enough, and there are enough interesting challenges elsewhere that he'd like to take on some of those, and I wholeheartedly supported him in that. That creates opportunities for others. Remember that the next 7 years at Canonical and the next 7 years of Ubuntu will look quite different. The rigor and structure that Matt helped us create in Ubuntu, I think, will serve us very well. But now we need new thinking and new skills as well to build something that doesn't work only for developers and for technologists, but will also work for home users. So I think that this is a healthy thing. We had a lot of celebrations with Matt in Budapest during UDS, and he said, and I think it's true, that he will continue to participate in Ubuntu. He'll stay on the technical board, and if I know him, he'll have some specific things that he will lead. And because we're an open project and community members participate as much as Canonical members, I think we have the unique opportunity to get the benefit of his input, under in both senses.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you very much, and looking forward to listening to you speak again.
Thomas Love, thank you for your questions.